Pesto gave my coding a new direction.
Life-changing experience after that.
I got from Pesto, right? That is product.
Pesto gave my coding a new direction.
Life-changing experience after that.
I got from Pesto, right? That is product mindset, right?
It was a really great experience for me. I realized that it bring out the best in me.
Awesome team, awesome work.
Best coding practices in the world. Been able to express myself better.
We have mentors from like top multinational companies all over the world.
My experience has been pretty good.
I was in dire need of a mentor. I had never had a mentor, so I was like, "नहीं मेरे को तो चाहिए." And if they are offering me, why won't I take?
That was the perfect job that I wanted. I'm proud to be part of Pesto Tribe.
People who are considering to do it, just do it. Just join Pesto.
So hey everyone, how's it going? I can see a few people join in, and hello Brittany.
Hello, how's it going?
All great. We are excited to learn a new framework. I think that's what front-end developers do, right?
Exactly, every day, right? We have a new one.
Cool. So I am going to quickly do some housekeeping stuff. So, oops. So first of all, let me welcome all of you on this Saturday evening. By the way, it's morning for Brittany. Good morning, Brittany. Thank you, thank you for doing this. And I just wanted to highlight that here at Pesto, what we are trying to achieve is accelerate the education and impact of the next generation of developers in India, and we're still at a very nascent stage, I would say, but we are trying to get there where essentially we can almost say that hey, we have like a really amazing community here. So one of the ways that we do is obviously hosting technical events, and there is town hall events with our founder, which is Ayush, and you should also check out our Discord server where you would hang around with like-minded people. And this month we are doing like a very it's like a amazing initiative where we are trying to follow an open source curriculum, and we'll be live streaming every weekday, and there will be exercises, projects at the end as well. So this is like a 6-week thing, but we're calling it 30 days of JavaScript challenge. Don't ask me why, but yeah, it is what it is. So again, I'm going to share that link with you. So today's guest is a really special one, and I'm very privileged to have her here. She is a DX engineer at Netlify. She's also doing amazing stuff apart from work, where I don't believe like how she's able to do it while being a parent, but she's the founder of Svelte Sirens. She co-hosts the Svelte Radio, where I think the founder of Svelte is going to be there recently. Brittany, is that right?
Just released yesterday. Yeah, we had Rich Harris on talking about the new routing changes in SvelteKit, so that was fun.
Yeah, SvelteKit is bringing a lot of changes, so it's
yeah.
It's not a topic for today, but I had to mention it.
We're going to avoid SvelteKit today.
And yeah, there's also she's going to participate in the Svelte Summit event in Stockholm. So good luck with that, and do follow her. I think she's an amazing human being, and it will be great if you can. So that is it. I hope I did not take too much time, and I will hand over the microphone back to Brittany. Hey, Brittany.
Awesome. Okay. Hello. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the welcoming intro. And I don't even know if you're aware, but I actually got my start coding, doing what you're setting out this community to do, like creating this open source content with the learn, build, teach philosophy is what I use. So if you learn something, build something with it, and then teach it back to others, that you can grow your career. And I actually found both of my jobs through Discord. So jump in that Discord community and go and find like-minded people, because it's seriously like the best way to get started in this career, no doubt. So I appreciate what you're doing, and you're doing a wonderful job with it also. So as already said, I am Brittany Postma. I'm a developer experience engineer at Netlify, and I do a lot of content. As he was saying, I am kind of all over the place. I have 3 kids at home, so it is very busy, but I like it. So I do lots of things, but today we're here to talk about Svelte 101 and just the basics of what is Svelte, how do you get started in Svelte, and just some of the syntax things that we need to learn. So I have the svelte.dev screen up here, and this is basically where you're going to want to get started if you're going to learn Svelte. But first, let's talk about what is Svelte. What makes Svelte different from the other front-end libraries, and like we were talking about, the new frameworks that we see every single day, what makes Svelte different? So rather than using a virtual DOM like popular ones like React and Vue use, it actually compiles its code down to vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So you're going to get that platform feel of using vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript without having that complexity that some of the other frameworks offer. It creates a much smaller bundle size because of that, and it allows you to write less code and then just use the platform, which is what we're all kind of aiming for. So here on svelte.dev, we have several things that I suggest you open up. The tutorial is probably the best way to get started learning Svelte. It's got a whole list of things about every single syntax thing, and it literally just walks you through it. You can go all the way to the bottom and show me, and it'll populate, but I suggest actually reading through it and going through all of those. Some of the other things is opening up the docs and seeing what each thing means. We'll leave some of these open for today. And then the last thing is the REPL, which I already have open here, and this is actually what we're going to be working in today. So the first thing that we want to talk about here is how to make dynamic stuff in our HTML. So a Svelte file, we just end in a .svelte syntax. I was just catching up on some of the chat. So hi, everyone. So the .svelte syntax is on the file name. And then basically you just have a script tag, an like your markup, your HTML. And then down here, we could actually have just a style tag. Just like vanilla HTML. Yeah, that's right. And let's do font size. Just really big. And let's make it. And it's basically just like an HTML file. The only difference are these curly braces. So once you're in curly braces in your markup, you're in the JavaScript world. So you can write any JavaScript inside of those curly braces. So here we're just declaring a variable called name, and then we're setting it to world, and then we're using that variable in the markup, and it's populating it. So let's extract this. Let's actually create a component where we can pull this code out and make it live somewhere else. So we're going to create a new file, and we're going to name this hello.svelte. And I'm actually just going to cut all of this and paste it over in hello.svelte. And now we don't have anything in our app file because that is our route. It looks like someone asked about debugging, and there are debugging tools, and we actually have something in Svelte called @debug. So you can @debug name. I have actually never used this, so I don't know how it works, but there's an @debug. So let's go over to the docs and find debug. So @debug, and you can just debug your variables like that. And you can console log anything. You can, however you want to debug, you can use the VS Code debugger. There's several ways that you could debug in this, but there's that. And back in the app.svelte file, I'm now going to import the hello.svelte component that we just created. So there is a script tag at the top, like we saw before, and this is to import your JavaScript and declare your variables and those kinds of things. So we're going to import hello. I'll move my giant cursor from, and we want to go from the same directory. You're not actually seeing the directory here, but just imagine that this is a folder structure where everything is just adjacent to each other. And it's from hello, and you do have to put the .svelte for Svelte files, because otherwise it thinks it's a JavaScript file. And then we can just use hello down here, and now we see it again. The next thing that I want to show you how to do is actually how to put props into a component. So right now we just have this variable name, and it's internal to that hello.svelte component. But to make it available to other components, so we could set it from somewhere else, we just need to add an export to the front of it. And that kind of follows that module syntax where if you export something, it's available from the outside. You don't actually have to import it. You can now just use it, and we can make my name Brittany. And you saw how everything was just reactive. It just updated in the UI. It didn't take a second. It didn't wait. It just automatically updated as soon as I started typing, which is really nice and one of the great things about Svelte. Okay, so next thing is we talked a little bit about styling. And so now that I've moved this into a component, I actually want to show you how Svelte scopes these to each individual component. So we can see that there's a class on this h1 tag with Svelte dash and then a hash. And that actually allows any styling that is inside of a component to be scoped just to that component. So please don't ever do this, but if you add an h1 out here and you put something else in it, la, 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 and then we want to come down here and add some more styling. I keep trying to want to use my autocomplete from VS Code. And so forgive me if I keep trying to do that. And then we try to style this with color blue. It will style just the one in this component with blue, and then the other one stays the exact same as it was. So we can remove all of that. And the last thing in this section that I want to talk about is how to create children components. So how could we create like a layout file here and add some things in? There's some funny chat. Sorry about that. So we're going to create a layout component, but before we actually get into this layout component, I want to create a footer that we can use inside of the layout. I'm going to create two new files. We've got the layout.svelte and the footer.svelte. In the footer.svelte, we're going to just make a footer, regular HTML footer, nothing special. We're going to just made with, I'm going to use an emoji heart. Where's the sparkly heart? Sparkly heart. Made with love by Brittany. And then we can, again, like add some styles. I keep trying to do that style. And footer. And then let's just give it a little padding on the bottom. 0.5 rem. Not here to talk about CSS, but we might as well make it at least look pretty, right? Absolute. Bottom 0, and give it width of 100% and text align. Oops, it automatically saves it. So now back over in the layout file, we're going to create that script tag again, and we're going to import footer from footer.svelte, and then we can use that here. And we actually need to import the layout back in the app file too, because that's what's showing on the screen. So then we need the layout from layout.svelte. And I'm also interchanging these. It doesn't matter, but Prettier usually fixes it for me. So not doing that today. So now we have import layout. We have the footer and footer. What is happening here? Layout does, oh, I didn't use it. That's helpful, right? If we actually use the component. And the layout and import is not defined, failed to construct invalid base URL. What did I do? Layout app I'm going to log in and see what's happening. So the other cool thing about the REPL is you can log in and you can save it so you don't lose your progress, and you can refresh. Invalid base URL. Import layout from layout.svelte. What is happening here? Am I completely losing my mind?
Yep, let me try to chip in as well. Generally, whenever we are coding live, things do go a little astray.
Oh, they always do. Yeah.
Yep. Can you just?
I'm gonna go ahead and.
Yep. Can you just try renaming footer.svelte? Is that like because of the lowercase import footer from .footer.svelte?
Oh yeah, you're right. I bet that is
Ah,
what was wrong.
cool.
My import was incorrect because I named it with a capital. Totally correct. Thank you for pointing that out. And you're right. Live coding is always fun.
Just
So,
one
okay.
thing, Brittany, can you just increase the font size a little bit bigger? Yep. Yeah.
Is that good?
And yeah, is there a dark theme as well, or no? That's asking for too much.
I don't think there is in the REPL, unfortunately. I mean, I could pull this out. Let me see. Svelte.new is a way to create, and Code Sandbox has a dark theme that we could work in. Would this be better?
No, I think the previous one looks better. Yeah, let's stick to this. Yep. Sorry.
All right. That's okay. All right. So back over here in the REPL. So now that I've got my import correct, sorry about that. Always miss one little thing. So one little lowercase and it didn't work. And it did tell me the URL was incorrect. I was just misreading the error message. But okay, so footer.svelte. And now we want to finish building out this layout and actually be able to wrap it with content. So we can create a main section here. And then what we use in Svelte to create the children and tell the children where we want them to go is a slot. And so we have a slot component now. And now that we have a slot, we can go back over into app. And instead of self-closing this layout, we can wrap the layout. And we've got our footer and we've got our content. And if we inspect this, we can see that because it's so large, it's going to be, let me break this out into a new window. It's going to be hard to see. Okay. So now we've got the main tag with the H1 inside, and then we've got the footer outside of that, because we said with the slot content for whatever's here to be inside of the slot, and then the footer is outside of that area. So it's going to be outside of that main tag. So that is how slots work. That is how components work. We've went over styling. We've went over props and how to set props from other components. Let's get into some templating blocks. And this is going to get into some more of the complex stuff of how you would actually build an application in Svelte, where we're going to fetch some data and we're going to iterate over that data. We're going to use an if block in Svelte. So there's some things called templating blocks. And because Svelte is a superset of HTML, we can actually give it like superpowers. So we saw that we have the dynamic capabilities with the curly braces. But if we go ahead and create a new file, and this one I am going to name cats.svelte. And hopefully we will get all of our spelling and uppercase correct this time. We're going to create another script tag. And in the script tag, we're going to use something called onMount from Svelte. And this is, if you're familiar with kind of old school React, component onMount, component did mount, like those lifecycle methods. This is a lifecycle method from Svelte. And because we're just working with vanilla Svelte, this is all client-side rendered. So this is all rendering in the client and running the JavaScript. And so what this onMount is doing is waiting for this component to actually mount onto the DOM before it runs this code that we're going to add into the onMount function. We want to, there we go. We want to declare an array to hold our cats. And then we're going to fetch some data, but we want to do it in an onMount. which is a function that receives a callback, and we actually need to make it async. And we want to get a response from an API. So I'm going to await this response, and we just use the regular fetch API from the browser. There's nothing special here. It's just using the platform. And we're going to call the cat API. api.thecatapi.com, and we're going to use version 1, and we're going to get images. We're going to search, and we're going to limit the search to 9 so we don't get a ton. Not 0, 9. 9, Brittany. There we go. And then we want to set our cats array that we declared initially to the response that we're going to get back, which is a JSON response. So we're going to use response.json here. And this cats equals is very important. So if we tried to do cats.push here and add the cats that way, it would not work because Svelte's reactivity works based on assignment. So this equals is very important to Svelte. So once you set a variable to something, it makes it reactive in Svelte. And now we should be able to console.log our cats, and we have to import it back into app. Import cats from uppercase cats.svelte, learn my lesson, and use it down here. Import is not defined. Import cats from cats.svelte. And I don't have anything in here, so maybe it's going to get mad at me. Let's just cats. Why are you doing this to me today? This was working this morning. Unexpected token, cats.svelte 10.0. So it's saying line 10 in cats.svelte is unexpected because I didn't close my on mount. And we've got the object because I had this. I didn't need that. But now in our console, we should see our object array of objects of the cats. So now we can actually use this in the markup. And down here, to iterate over an array in Svelte, we can use this templating block syntax that has a pound. Go ahead and clear this and make this smaller so we can actually see what happens here. We're going to use each, and because we named the variable that has the array cats as cat. So that's going to take each iteration in the array and give it the name cats, and then we can close the each block with a slash just like we would a regular HTML tag. And then inside of here we can use an image and give the src cat.url. And the alt doesn't have a great alt tag. I was going to see if there's something. It's got an ID, but let's use backticks, and then we could do a cat image with ID. And this is not a great alt text, but I just wanted to get something dynamic to show you how you could do that in here. ID, a cat image with ID of ID. And now we need to close that and expected value for the attribute 13. So value cat.url. Each cats as cat. Is it mad at this? It's mad at this. Oh, I need to put it in curly braces because I wasn't in JavaScript. ID is not defined. Oh, cat.id. There we go. And now we have some cats. And they're kind of not very pretty right now. So we could come down here again and we could just give them a style and make them, let's make them just a width of 50 pixels. That way we can actually see all of the little pretty cats there. So now we have our cats component that is actually fetching data and rendering that out in another component. And then we could actually say here, we don't want to see this component at all if there are no cats. So if we say if no cats, actually I need to say cats.length. If cats.length is not equal to 0. So if the cats.length is not equal to 0, it will render out the cats. But if it's equal to 0, so I guess if we just commented this out, it won't show the cats. It will not render it at all. So that is basically how templating blocks, that's how you fetch data in Svelte. And now we're going to get into an even more complex topic, which is stores. Stores is global state management for Svelte. If you've used React, you may have used Redux or the context API, which Svelte also has a context API. So you could use context and providers in Svelte as well. But stores are a way to manage global state. So this time, instead of doing a .svelte file, we can create a stores.js file. And this will give us a JavaScript file. You can also use TypeScript here. And I should probably point out that when you use TypeScript, you just use lang attribute and then equals TS. You can also use preprocessors in the style by adding lang and SCSS or whatever you would be using. And those just would have to be installed. You can use those that way. Undo those. And then back in the stores file, we're going to import a Rideable. So this is a store that can be written to in Svelte. And that is from Svelte/store. I am trying very hard to keep up with the chat, and it's coming from different directions, so I'm trying my best. So function, we're just going to create regular JavaScript in here. But inside of this function, create count, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to destructure off of this Rideable store the subscribe, the set, and the update methods. And this is what Svelte provides in this store. And then you set your initial value inside of the function call. So you give it that argument of 0 to set the initial count to 0. And so now that we've pulled those off, we can actually return our subscribe method. And then we want to do a couple of things. I want to create an increment and a decrement so that we can have some buttons that will add and decrease the count and then maybe even reset it. So let's go ahead and create an increment property here. And we're going to give that a function. And on that function, we're going to say update. So we're using this update method that the Rideable store gives us. And we're going to say count and then count +1. And then we can do the same thing for decrement. And we're going to say update, count -1. And then we'll do reset too, just for kicks. And on this one, instead of using update, we're actually just going to set it to 0 because we don't need to update it. We just need to basically reset it. So we set to 0, and then we need to export this function. So export count equal to create count. Okay. So now we have our store, but we need to actually use it in a new file. So we're going to create a count.svelte file. Count.svelte. And inside of count.svelte, we want another script tag so that we can import our store. And we're going to import count from the stores file. And then down in the markup, we can just say an H2 here, the count is, so we can see what the count is. And then this is the special syntax for Svelte, is the $. And this is how you use a store in Svelte. It's also used for reactivity. So if you had a statement that you needed to be reactive up in your JavaScript, you can use $:, and then console.log count. It's how we make the statement reactive. So every time count changes, it will rerun that statement. So the count is, and then we say count, and then we want to create some buttons. So I'm going to give it a section just to add some styles to it. I'm going to go ahead and comment out cats.svelte so that is not just constantly reloading on us. Okay, and now in here, we're going to create some buttons. And in Svelte, we have this on colon syntax that allows us to use JavaScript DOM events. So on click for a button is on colon click. And we can use the count methods that we created, count.increment. And we can just give it a plus and close that. And another button with on click. And we're going to use the decrement method. Minus, close the button. And then we're going to give it a reset button. On colon click and count dot reset. And reset. And I'm going to go ahead and go down to the bottom and give it a style tag. You can set prettier up to organize these however you want. It doesn't matter if the script tag is on top, but that is the default for Svelte. So script markup styles is the default, but you can organize these with prettier however you see fit and would like to see your code ran. I've seen it all different ways. Svelte doesn't have a ton of things that they tell you to do. They kind of leave it to you, leave it up to you, your choice. And in the style tag, I'm going to give that section, since it's scoped, a display of flex, and just give it a little gap of 0.25 rim, just so they have some spacing. And we can't see this yet, so I'm going to go ahead and import it back over into app.svelte, and hopefully I don't run into issues this time. Import, and what did we name it? We named it count from count.svelte. And we'll go ahead and add our count. And now we have our count component. Lovely, it works that time. So let's see if it works. We can just go ahead and add that in there, and it works just fine. Works pretty easy. But this doesn't really show the power of stores. This shows that you can use a JavaScript file to declare a variable, write to it, and then update it in a component. But what if you wanted to share that state across multiple components? So let's go over to our hello component and import the count from stores. And then let's also do $count here. So we have the 0 here too. Footer, I'm going to see on the layout if we can just add a style tag. Make minimum height 100 VH. Will that push that footer down? Didn't. I was just trying to push the footer down. I'm going to comment that out too so we can see what's going on. I have it zoomed in so much that, oh, it didn't. There we go. So now that we can see everything, because it's zoomed in, it was kind of overlapping, was defeating the purpose of being able to see this stuff. So now we have count here in the header component, in the hello component, and also in the count component. And now we update them and they just work together. There's no lag between the two. They just work exactly at the same time. And if we reset it, they both go back to 0, and that shares the state across your application. I see what is happening with the chat. So we're using Restream and it's scrolling up. And I thought it was scrolling down. So I was scrolled all the way to the bottom. I'm like, I'm not seeing any of these new comments coming in. So if there are any questions, I'm sorry, I didn't see any of the questions. So if anything needs to be asked or explained better, just let me know.
No worries. I just did not want to, stop you while you were in flow. But I pinned some of those messages at the top. So we'll get to them when you have some.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. I'm so sorry about that. I was looking to the bottom, not the top. We have one more thing to cover and then we'll actually get to the questions. So let me cover actions and then we'll go ahead and go over some of the questions. Actions in Svelte is a really powerful way to actually access the DOM node in Svelte. So you could create CSS transitions, you can create click events, you can create all kinds of things with actions. So we're going to create another new JavaScript file, and this one is going to be called click outside.js. And then we're going to just export a function for this one called click outside. And in actions, you get access to a node. You also get access to params, but we won't be using those here. And then inside of the function for the node, we just want to create a function that we can add an event listener to and check to see if it is actually on that click. So we're going to create a handle click function just to check if it has been clicked. And we get an event with that. And if there is no node, or I'm sorry, if the node does not contain the event.target, then we will dispatch an event, new custom event, outclick. And again, these are web APIs that you can look up on MDN. These are not specific to Svelte, but Svelte gives you this action power that enables you to access the DOM node with Svelte reactivity and syntax. So now that we have our if block, make sure everything, we're still inside of, just going to console log outside. So we know that it is, whoops, in the string outside. And then outside of that block for the handle click function, we want to create an event listener. So add an event listener of click, and we'll run the handle click function, true. And then we need to return the destroy method. And the destroy method will get rid of this action if whatever is inside of this is true. So document.remove event listener, we want to clean up that event listener, click, and we'll rerun the handle click function. Now we've created our action. So to use the action, we want to go back into the app.svelte file. We'll just use it in a regular file here, and we want to import our action. Click outside, I think is what we called it, with camel case side from, and that is from click outside. Now down here on the bottom, we can actually add use colon. So we're seeing that use syntax again, click outside. And that will allow us to use, I'm going to bring up this so that we can see what happens when we click outside. It's not running. Let's click outside from click outside, use click outside. I actually want to use it on this one maybe, just to see if wonder. You're right with the live coding stuff. It's always fun. So we've got our node, we've got our event. If the node does not contain the event.target, node.dispatch event, new custom event, outclick, app.svelte, import click outside from click outside, and we want to use click outside. Could not be cloned, open DevTools. Actions can only be applied to DOM elements, not components. Okay, I see what's happening. So I just need to add, let's just add an H3. That is my bad. Use click outside. Click outside me. And so now if we click outside, there we go. All right, so those are some of the most powerful features of Svelte that I basically just wanted to highlight here. We have went over a lot of stuff, and I know there's a lot of questions, so I want to allow time for those. But I just kind of want to review real quick everything that we went over. So we created a component. We found out how to export to allow props to go into it to set it from outside. We created a store and used global state. We found out that styles are scoped to each component. We created a layout and used a slot to put children in. And we created an action so that we could actually access the DOM node and create custom events and transitions and stuff on that. So now we will go ahead and transition and get into our questions and see what I missed.
Yeah, I think so far I have, around 6 questions, and we'll
Okay,
start
perfect.
with an easy one here. So we'll display these questions on the stream as well. So how do you use npm packages here? Any?
So Svelte is ESM first. So you can actually just use like unpackage or an CDN for npm packages, and you could import them directly into a script tag to use them. If you were using something like SvelteKit or a bundler with it, then you would be able to use it in those just in npm, like in your terminal, and you would have a package.json with those there.
Yep. And just for some context, could you just give like a really quick intro about SvelteKit? Like, I guess some of them, might not be aware.
Absolutely. So what we use today, I mentioned a little bit briefly about how Svelte is, this version of Svelte is client-side rendered. So everything that we're doing here is just using client-side JavaScript to render out the UI. If you wanted to use server-side rendering or static generation, you would need some kind of meta framework. And this is going to allow you to do things like routing between different pages and have other things built into it. And that's what SvelteKit is. SvelteKit set out to be the default way to create Svelte apps. I actually don't recommend that right now because SvelteKit's going through a ton of changes, and it's actually not as intuitive as it used to be, in my opinion. So I avoided it today for that reason. They just had breaking changes like 3 days ago, and the whole routing system changed. So I was avoiding it a little bit, but there are other tools like Astro that you can use that does no JavaScript by default, and you can use Svelte, just the Svelte that we learned here today in Astro. The other thing that you can use is Remix is working on a Remix router Svelte, and that should be, it's actually out now in experimental phase, but that should be out soon too. I'm very excited about that one.
Amazing. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing that. So moving along, Jagannath has a question around lifecycle methods. So could we touch a little bit about how it's similar and maybe how it's different to what we can see in? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just went over to the docs. I'm going to make this a little smaller so we can see everything here. So there's lifecycle methods in Svelte. They're similar to React's, but they're still a little different. So we have the on mount one, which we used, which is when the component mounts. We have a before update. So before the component updates, it will run this callback function. We have after update. So after the component updates, it will run that callback function. On destroy, so when the component is destroyed, it would run this. And then there's tick, which allows you to apply changes consistently over a set amount of time. So there are a few there, and there's some similarities to React, but they are different.
Gotcha. And maybe this is like a good question, like a good segue to this question, which is maybe we're taking a step back here, but what is like a virtual DOM?
That's a big question too. So when your app is created and generated in the browser, it generates a DOM tree, which is just basically the structure. It looks like a tree structure of everything that's on the page. What a virtual DOM is it mocks that, and then it looks for any changes and it diffs those changes. So it looks between the real DOM and the virtual DOM, and it sees if anything's, and then it updates it. What Svelte does is it compiles all of the code away to vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and then it will surgically kind of inject the changes that it needs to do with regular JavaScript.
Yep. I think that's where the performance, improvement comes in, right? Like, could you?
It definitely
touch on a
does
little bit
make
about,
yeah, because it is compiled away, and it's because it's using that vanilla HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's a smaller bundle size. So React, when it loads into the browser, I think it's like 32 kilobytes automatically that you just have to inject into the browser to use that virtual DOM, because it needs the React library to be able to use that virtual DOM and inject itself. There is a little bit of Svelte code that gets left there, but it is much smaller. I mean, if you've seen the comparisons online, the size of apps in Svelte versus other tools is significantly different. It's much smaller.
And maybe I think this difference won't be seen unless you use maybe things like animations. Like these days you can see a lot of UI UX. It's getting animation heavy, and that's where if you're using Svelte, I think that's where it's much more like a smoother experience for the.
I actually really didn't even have time to get into it today, but that is one of the other powerful things about Svelte is there's built-in transitions and animations. So in React, you have to reach for other libraries, but they're actually built into Svelte so that you could use them without importing another thing. And it makes your code that much nicer that it all kind of works together, and it's built for that.
Yep.
And that's actually how Svelte was created too. I mean, it was created at the New York Times because of a need that they saw with graphics editing, that they needed these smaller bundle sizes to update and do these graphics heavy sites. And that's why Svelte came to be.
Yep. Awesome. Now, I think this one, I try to answer it by saying that, this is Svelte giving you sugary, stuff on top of what JavaScript API does. Anything else that you wanted to add here?
That is exactly what it's doing. So it is just sugar syntax on top of the for each block in JavaScript. So or for each loop in JavaScript. So you're just running the each loop, but it gives you a nice syntax for doing that inside of a Svelte component. So where do we use that in cats? So I think this reads a lot nicer than trying to do something like cats.for each cat and then cat.url. I mean,
yeah,
this just each cat says cat. Yeah, it looks nicer to me. So
Yep. And maybe I think Jagannath answered, this by his question himself, that hey, this is kind of like Svelte introducing a sort of templating language. It's generally, I've seen it with frameworks like Rails. They have these really like they would use ERB. I think there was other like Haml, things like that. So I'm guessing it's this is what is happening, right? Yeah.
So there are lots of markup languages that are like that, like you were saying. I can't even remember the names of them now, but I think it is based heavily on how Rails did that. But this is actually a superset of HTML. So it's not its own templating language. It's just a superset. They've added some of that sugary syntax in on top of HTML.
Yeah. Yes. And I think for backend developers, Svelte is so much better. I just want to say it, put it out there. So give it a try. I think you'll definitely enjoy. So cool. I think we are finishing up on our questions. There's 5 more to go, and I'm guessing we still have time. Revant wanted to review this idea of stores. I guess we maybe covered a lot. So could we just do like a review of that?
Yeah, so the Rideable Store is where you can write to a global state. So it's how you share your global state in Svelte. You can declare a variable with this Rideable. We set the initial value to 0. And then we had these methods that are off of that: subscribe, set, and update. are on that Rideable Store. And we can return those to be able to be used in other locations. So we then used it back in the hello component with that $ syntax. And we also used it in our count component, and we used the methods that we created to update that state. And then there's also readable and derived stores. So you can create only readable stores, and you can create ones that are derived from other stores. So if you needed to derive a count from, if you wanted to do like 2 times the count, then you could do a derived store and use that count store in the derived store.
Yep. So if we had to, you know, kind of connect it with what React, you would essentially have to write a lot of lines of code, right, to in order to do this using hooks and stuff like that.
Yes, so you don't have hooks. Like React needs to update the state because it's pure functions. It wants to make sure that everything is pure functions. Svelte extracts all of that away and takes care of it behind the scenes, so you don't actually have to do that. I see a lot of comments too about Solid.js. Solid.js is great. Ryan Corniato works with me at Netlify. It's amazing. Like, he's taking a lot of stuff from Svelte too. Like, he's learning from the other frameworks. So it's a really good tool. I'm very excited for the future of Solid too. It's great.
Amazing. And I think Jagannath brings in a good question. Like does this completely eliminate Redux, like what Redux does?
Exactly. Yes. So you would not need a Redux style solution in Svelte. It provides it out of the box for you.
Yep. Awesome. Tushar is wondering, like, you know, this the script tags are a little, you know, new to me. Do I really want that? So I mentioned to him, you know, like the reason for doing this is that everything is in one place. Like, you have JavaScript, CSS, and HTML in one place, so it might be easier for any, you know, person who is seeing the code for the first time. So any other reason for, you know, having this
So
thing in
yeah,
place?
it co-locates your code together. So in your components, you would keep all of the JavaScript for that component in that script tag. And then that way you can keep your logic separated to each of the individual components. So you would want to have component logic not leaking out and having like the Redux style state thing. You wouldn't use that for every single situation. You would keep your internal logic to a component just in that script tag. And so that's why we have those script tags where we need to use JavaScript in the components. The footer doesn't have a script tag because we're not using any JavaScript.
Yep. That makes total sense. Yeah. Cool. And 2 more questions. I think can Svelte clean up side effects on component unmount automatically? Yeah.
I don't know.
There might be an
answer
on
to that.
destroy method. I saw an on destroy method there.
So you can return a callback.
Yeah.
I did not do that, but you can return a callback to clean up if you want to, or you can do an on destroy.
Yep. Gotcha. And there are 2 opinionated questions. One is, can we build a large scale application? I'm guessing New York Times, like there's a lot of websites now using Netflix is using Svelte as well. Is that true?
Oh, I didn't know about Netflix, but Apple Music just created their beta version of their music store in Svelte. So, I mean, there are large companies using Svelte. The New York Times uses it for all of those graphics intensive data analysis sites, and lots of big companies. Alaska Airlines uses it. I mean, yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't use it.
Yeah. And I think, you know, like what we need to do is also, you know, test the limits here, because that's how we all learn, right? Yep.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And yeah, this is another interesting one.
I think Vue 3 just came out too, right? Like recently?
Yeah,
or not?
yeah.
Oh, That's Nux 3. Sorry, not Vue 3.
Okay, okay. Yep, yep.
Yeah, so Vue 3, I think Svelte also took a lot of similarities from Vue, and Vue is a great language, and use the right tool for you. And if you like Vue, then use Vue. They're going to be very similar, but Vue still uses that virtual DOM. So that's one of the big benefits, I think, in my opinion, for Svelte is that compiler. It does add a build step, so you have to build and compile your code, but it's really fast at doing that because it uses Vite under the hood, which also Vue uses Vite. So
Yeah.
even Decathlon uses Svelte. Cool.
Awesome. So I think we have a couple of more questions.
Okay.
I just
While
want to
while you're
answer
getting
one
those.
thing, which I feel is an important one, is how does production, like if we have to deploy an app on production,
So
what does deployment look like? Is it as simple as like uploading it on Netlify, or maybe
absolutely. So you can use, like I was talking about, depends on how you want to render it. So client-side rendering, it's going to build it for production, and you could just get it on Netlify and it would detect your framework automatically, and it would go ahead and set those build settings, and it would build it and deploy it to production. I don't have this one, but I have lots of different Svelte apps, and I have Svelte Kit apps. I have, like I said, there's lots of different frameworks that you can use, but with Svelte Kit, you have a choice of rendering. So you can use serverless functions, you can use edge functions on Netlify with it. So it depends on how you want to build for production, but it's very easy to build on any of the platforms out there with Svelte.
Yeah. I think front
And
end.
it uses Vite for build.
Yep. I think front end is at a stage where deployment is never an issue. I think any framework which needs to exist has to get that really, like they have to make sure that, yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Are you trying out
I was
something
just-
with transitions?
I am. Yeah, I was trying to get in a fade here just so we could see transition DOM elements. Okay, so let's fade in. I think we need to add we need to add a duration to it. So duration. What is it, 1,000 seconds? Will that work? Oh, I think I need, here, let me copy that. Still not working. I was just going to say, because I forgot to go over that. Transition, fade. This is how you would use it. I don't, why negative 1,000? I don't know why it's not working though. Should be, so you import the transition and then you use the transition on the element and you can set parameters for that. Fades in and out. What if I just copy if condition? So if count is equal to 1. And let me go back to fade off. Fade and if count is equal to 1. Do I not have count in this? Oh, I don't have count in this though. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if count is equal to 1, it's still not fading in. This should work. I wonder if it has something to do
Yeah.
with the REPL.
But no worries, we'll take care of it.
This is how you use it. Live coding is super fun.
Yeah. But this was great. I think we are just past the 1 hour mark, and time just flew away.
Yes,
And
it
I would,
does.
and I just want people who are still hanging in there. I just want them to drop some love for Brittany, who's doing this very early morning. So yep, I can see Himani doing that. So last thing is, if you want to give any shout outs, Brittany, anything that you wanted to highlight, we would love to share it with the community here. Yeah.
Yeah, we spoke a little bit earlier that I'm going to be the MC at Svelte Summit. I'm really excited about that. So that's coming up in 2 weeks. I can't believe how close that is. But yeah, we'll be in Stockholm this year, the first live in-person conference for Svelte. So really excited.
Yep.
And then
Should
the
be.
Svelte Sirens. If you go to sveltesirens.dev too, we have monthly talks and we have live streams with different, like they had one on Astro the other day where we were interviewing the founder of Astro and showing how to use it in Svelte.
I got to check that out. Yeah. I'm right now
Yeah.
using SvelteKit, but yeah, I'm a little scared of the moment, like it would upgrade versions, everything would, break. So
Everything would break, but they do have a migrate script. I don't know if you saw that. So
yeah, I saw that. Amazing. Thank you. Cool.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
Yep. So do follow Brittany on Twitter. I think that's where she is, I'm guessing, more active, right? Yeah.
I am mostly active on Twitter. I do have LinkedIn as well.
Yep.
So feel free to connect, follow, and feel free to ask me your Svelte questions. The Svelte Discord too. If you go to svelte.dev/chat, you can jump in the Svelte Discord. We have auto-threaded help channels, and the Svelte Society has a community channel where we all just like to chat about Svelte. So.
Yep. Cool. This is great, and hopefully we'll see you again sometime soon. Have a great rest of the day, everyone.
Yes.
Yep. See ya.
Later.